Hi there. It's been a long time since I posted a video. Usually I sit down with some great idea and then it feels like it's way too much work and I wander off to do something else. But today I want to do a video on COVID vaccines and children. So I have 3 children. Only 2 of them are of an age in Canada where they could get a COVID vaccine. One is 17 and one is 14. And my wife and I have decided not to get them vaccinated. And there may be many of you watching this that have decided the same thing, and you're looked at, I don't want to say with scorn, but people look at you like you're crazy for not having vaccinated your children. You don't care about your kids, you don't care about others because they could be carriers and infecting other people. You don't believe in science. Well, for those of you that chose not to vaccinate your kids, I want to help you be able to articulate to others why you made that decision. And I'm going to go through the thought process that I used, and I think I'll be able to demonstrate that my decision to not vaccinate my children has applied a far more scientific process than those that chose to vaccinate their kids. So, to those that say, I don't care about my children, or to those that say, forget your children, because I would say to people, like, my kids have a very low risk of dying from COVID. They have no underlying health conditions. Their chances of getting seriously ill or death is infinitesimally small. So then they'll say, oh yeah, but what about others? What about if your kids become carriers and infect other people? Well, let me talk about that for a second. I want to give you my philosophy on life and how I approach taking care of people in society. And I'm going to do this by 3 concentric circles. In the middle circle is immediate household. So, my kids, my wife. That's the middle circle. The next circle would be extended family and friends. And then the outer circle society. So people would say, okay, fine, you don't think your kids are at big risk of dying, but what if they infect someone here or here? Well, my philosophy in life, and this is actually based on a scriptural principle. You can find this in 1 Timothy chapter 3 and 1 Timothy chapter 5, where it says that you need to take care of your household first and their well-being before you take care of anyone else. And in fact, it says if you don't take care of your household, you're disqualified from service in the church. So the idea is my immediate responsibility for the well-being of people are those that live within my household. Once I've satisfied their needs and their well-being, then I can concern myself about my extended family and friends. And then I can concern myself, once they're taken care of, about society at large. So when it comes to choosing whether to give my kids a vaccine, I'm not thinking about how it's impacting someone out here, because my immediate responsibility is the well-being of those within this circle. So that means I need to evaluate the risk and reward of vaccinating my kids. Is it actually better for them personally to be vaccinated or unvaccinated? So hopefully that gives you a perspective on where I started my analysis. Now I'm going to go a bit further and provide you the scientific process I went through to arrive at the decision not to vaccinate. Okay, so I'm going to explain the scientific rationale I used and my thought process by talking about marbles. So first I'm going to draw a jar. So here's a jar. You can't see through it. It's opaque. It's not glass. You can't see through it. And I'm going to tell you that there are marbles in here. There are black marbles and there are white marbles. And the rules are this. I'm going to put some marbles into here. I'm going to shake it up. You're going to reach your hand in. If you grab a black marble, you win $1 million. If you grab a white marble, you die. Now suppose I tell you that there are 10 marbles in this jar. 9 of them are black and 1 of them is white. Would you play that game? Would you stick your hand into that jar, hoping you get a black marble and win $1 million, or risk getting the 1 marble and dying? I would tell you that for me, those odds aren't good enough. there's a 10% chance I'm going to grab that white marble. It's not worth the risk. Now what if I said there are now 100 marbles in that marble jar, 99 of them are black, and one of them is white. Same rules. Black marble, $1 million, white marble, you die. Are you going to stick your hand into that jar and play the odds? The odds are better, 99 to 1, but I don't think they're good enough for me to take that risk. What if there were 1,000 marbles in that jar? 999 of them are black, one is white. Put your hand in, black marble, $1 million, white marble, you die. Now we're getting into the realm of odds that I'd be tempted to stick my hand in. But what if we raised it and I said there are 10,000 marbles in that jar, 9,999 are black, and one is white. Now would you play that game? Would you stick your hand in there and grab a marble? If it's black, $1 million. If it's white, you die. At this point, I'd stick my hand into the jar. That is a high level of certainty that I'm going to get a black marble, and very unlikely I'm going to get white. If these were the odds in a casino game, I would go out, remortgage my house, take all my savings, and dump it all on black, because that's pretty close to a sure bet. Now, let me take COVID deaths among children and break it down into this marble analogy. So in Canada, since the start of this pandemic, there have been 16 deaths among youths 19 or less. And based on a study I read last November, there were no deaths under the age of 19 of any individual that did not have at least one other underlying condition. In other words, all the deaths under the age of 19 were of children, teens, that had at least one other comorbidity. Now, there were 16 deaths, and in Canada, there were 286,000, and I have it written down over here, 204 diagnosed cases. Now, I believe that this number is understated. Because how many people got this virus and didn't know they had it? There were a lot of asymptomatic people out there that just never got tested. I work for a company, and each year we have to bring a bunch of seasonal workers up to Alaska to work in fish plants. And during the pandemic, we had to test each of those workers to determine whether they were positive or negative for COVID. And there were hundreds of workers that tested positive. No symptoms. They would not have known that they had COVID if it was not for a mandatory test. So how many children under the age of 19 may have gotten COVID and had no idea? So I think that number is probably understated, whereas I'm more confident in the 16 deaths because deaths tend to get noticed, right? He's dead. Why did he die? And they probably died while in intensive care. So pretty easy to pinpoint how many actually died from COVID. This is probably understated. But even so, let's use these numbers. Let's calculate the death rate. So I'm going to take 16, that's 16 deaths under the age of 19 in 204 cases. That is a death rate of 0.00055 or 0.005%. That's really low. That's really low. Now let's take that number and bring it back to my marble example. How many marbles would that represent? How many black, how many white? Well, to determine that, we need to take the number 1 and divide it by the death rate. And that will tell me how many marbles are in this jar. So I take 1 and I divide it by 0.000055. I get 18,181 marbles. So, if I told you that there were 18,181 marbles in this jar, 18,180 of those are black, and there's one white. I shake it up, you reach your hand in, if you grab a black marble, $1 million, you grab the white marble, you die from COVID. I would play those odds every day in a casino. That is an extremely low probability of dying from COVID. 1 in 18,181. That's extremely low. So when I consider my children who have no underlying conditions, I have a 17-year-old and a 14-year-old, and I have a 9-year-old who isn't even part of the equation because he's not permitted yet to take the vaccine. My 17-year-old and my 14-year-old have a 1 in 18,181 chance of dying from COVID. They're otherwise healthy. That risk is extremely low. Now, I've had trouble pulling the math together on this, but I believe the risk of someone under the age of 19 dying from COVID is less than the risk of dying in a car accident. So I've read stats that say 75% of people will be in a car accident at some point in their life, and 1 in every 170 car accidents leads to a fatality. So I don't know what the math is, but COVID's a very low risk. Now people say, well, what if we could just save one life? It's worth it. We'll just lock everybody down, everybody get vaccinated, we're just going to save one life. They are just preening around and pretending that they care. That argument makes no sense. Because if they actually cared about saving just one life, think of all the activities they would want to stop. They would stop driving cars. Because if one life matters, and one life does matter, don't get me wrong, but when they say we could prevent one life, they could prevent all car accident fatalities by outlawing car driving. If every life matters, if saving one life matters, let's stop driving cars. Let's stop skiing. Let's stop participating in sports. Let's stop walking outside and risk getting hit by lightning. That's a bad argument. This risk is so low that I look at that and I say, should I get my kids vaccinated? They virtually have no risk of dying from COVID. Now, how do I look at this relative to the vaccine? Well, let me draw another, on my eraser here, let me draw another marble jar. So here's the vaccine marble jar. And again, in this jar are black marbles and white marbles. So this is vaccine jar. Same thing, you can't see inside it. You can't see what color the marbles are. It has black marbles, it has white marbles, same rules. Grab a black marble, $1 million, grab a white marble, you die. But I don't know how many marbles are in that jar. And I don't know what percent are black and what percent are white. They could be 100% black and no risk at all. They could be 100% white and be a high risk of death. They could be 50-50, 70-30. I don't know. And I don't know because there are no longitudinal studies that show what the long-term effects or even short-term effects of these vaccines have in our children. So why would I dip my hand into this vaccine jar? I don't know how many marbles, I don't know what colors are in there, or how many of each, black or white. I know nothing about that. But what I do know is that my kids bear very little risk of dying from COVID. Extremely little. So why would I abandon what is virtually a non-risk and risk this? Why? If I care about my children, I'm going to base my decision on what I know. I know this. And in fact, if you look at death rates in the US of children under the age of 19 or around the world, we have the biggest data set available for anyone to analyze. It's all over the internet. Every country, they slice their mortalities down by COVID, by age group, by gender. They record death rates, hospitalization, number of cases. You can do this math in any country around the world, in any state in the US, and the percentages come out very close for kids under the age of 19. So this holds around the world. And so, as a parent that decided not to vaccinate my children, I didn't do it because I'm a science denier. I didn't do it because I have something against vaccines. I looked at the data that was available, and the data that's available says my kids have no risk of dying, virtually no risk, 1 in 18,000, 0.000055 or 0.0055%, virtually zero. I have no idea what this risk is. So why take a risk when I can rely on science and feel really safe that my children are okay. Now, I talked about protecting the outer circles, so immediate family or household, extended family and friends and society. So now you say, well, you're deciding not to get a vaccine, that's going to impact other people. Really? I can now make decisions to help mitigate that risk. So I know my children aren't vaccinated, and maybe they could be carriers. My parents are in their 80s and not in great health. So if I'm going to visit them, maybe my kids wear masks. Maybe they socially distance. Maybe we limit our meetings to being outside. Or my daughter has a friend who's has an illness, and because of that she's on medications that causes her to be immune compromised. My daughter will be safe around her. Social distance, wear a mask. Those are the things that we can do to protect the outer circles. But my immediate responsibility is to my household, and my rational decision making based on science is that there's virtually no risk to my children, so I'm not going to go and take an unknown risk for them. So now, if you're a parent out there and you decided not to vaccinate your kids, feel confident that you have made a decision that is supported by the science. And parents that have vaccinated your kids, I'm not saying you made a bad choice. This could be all black marbles. Everybody could be fine. I don't know. That's the point. I don't know. But when you look at a parent that didn't vaccinate their kids, do not accuse them, do not accuse us, because I'm one of them, of not being rational or not believing in science. Because I guarantee you that my decision to not vaccinate my kids is based on a far more scientific process than your decision to vaccinate your kids. And I say that because there's no data for this, and there's ample data for this that say there's little risk. So, yes, vaccines are amazing things. I'm vaccinated. I don't know what the risks are to me, but I'm an adult. I think I can take a couple of shots of something in the arm, and we'll see what the long-term effects are. I wanted to travel, and I have to travel for work, so a vaccine was necessary. I am fine with vaccines. I think vaccines are a miracle of science, but they need time to be tested.